shark lurking beneath the waves. Their determination to protect and preserve would guide them through the perilous voyage. The crew prepared to set sail as the sun set below the horizon. Among them was Connor Marshall, a young deckhand with much energy and ambition, eager to impress Captain Turner. Fear couldn't keep him down, not when the town's survival depended on their ability to perform the assignment successfully. Who fought off a similar threat a century ago. This hunter was a relic from the past. The professional hunter devised a unique plan for luring and capturing lethal sharks. Because of their optimism, the crew devised a plan combining traditional shark hunting knowledge with cutting-edge modern tools. They created an ingenious baiting technique and waited for the bull shark to take the bait before pursuing their objective. Finally, the end of the world arrived. The massive bull shark, drawn to the Ocean Voyager by the perfume of the bait, charged toward the ship with all of its might. When it lunged at the bait, the crew fired their device, causing the predator to become trapped in a net. They were exhausted but triumphant, and they were able to bring the mighty bull shark on board for examination. Dr. Crane's astonishment grew as she got a better look at this magnificent but potentially fatal creature. Even Captain Turner, who had challenged the apex predator, felt admiration for the beast for a brief period. The crew released the bull shark into the water when the sun rose, keeping it away from the Portville coast. They not only saved their town, but they also demonstrated that humans and the environment can coexist peacefully. When the dread buried beneath the tides was eventually extinguished, the town gained a new appreciation for the untamed force of the ocean. Their triumph over the deadliest bull shark attack became a tale passed down from generation to generation. It reminded every kind by fishermen long ago. The peaceful municipality experienced an extraordinary increase in bull shark sightings in 2011. Fear and dread grabbed the residents' hearts as the sharks crept closer to the shoreline, threatening the beloved settlement. In search of a solution, town officials approached Benjamin Ben Reynolds, a seasoned sea captain known for his expertise in navigating treacherous waters and comprehending the ways of the sea. Captain Ben set out on the Serenity Seeker with the sole purpose of unraveling the mystery behind the unusual shark activity and protecting the people from potential danger, accompanied by Dr. Isabella Izzy Bennett, a fearless marine biologist specializing in sharks, and Michael Mike Thompson, a skilled diver and underwater photographer. The crew set out on their voyage as the sun set below the horizon, filling the sky with flaming hues. They set sail into the azure waters, filled with both exhilaration and dread, the salty sea breeze filling their lungs. A government-assigned marine biologist, Amelia Crane, greeted Captain Turner with a cheerful, "Good day." She stated her intention to put a halt to the attacks in order to save more casualties. Captain Turner noted her desperation with a hard handshake and returned the gesture. Captain Turner described the dangers of the situation, emphasizing that they were dealing with a more sophisticated and dangerous bull shark, acting more like a lone predator than as part of a group. The crew had several close encounters with bull sharks as the days moved into nights. Their actions mesmerized Dr. Izzy, who an enormous bull shark appeared and took the team away. The passage of the shark sent foreboding waves through the water, reminding them of the dreadful fable. They continued their research, determined to find out the truth. Mike photographed the bull sharks throughout their dives, displaying their raw power and natural beauty. However, after studying the tape, he spotted ethereal entities in the backdrop that appeared and vanished like ghostly apparitions, scaring the team. The tension aboard the ship rose as the days passed. Rumors about the furious ghost spread, exacerbating their superstitious concerns. One night, they noticed an unexplained glow beneath the surface, and a luminous ghost in the shape of a massive shark ran towards the boat. The event disturbed and intrigued the crew, prompting them to reconsider the legends they had previously ignored. During their examination, they uncovered a pattern tying the shark movements to an old shipwreck near the town's harbor. Is there a link between the wreckage and the malicious spirit? They decided to investigate the shipwreck in the hopes of finding answers. The crew's underwater lights revealed the eerie ruins of the Vengeance, a once majestic warship, as they plunged into the dark depths. The ship's name sent shivers down their spines, cementing the link between old stories and current occurrences. They discovered relics of shark nets employed by merciless fishermen long ago among the wreckage. The image elicited many emotions, from rage at past violence to compassion for the bull sharks trapped in the nets. In hushed tones, Dr. Izzy theorized that the bull shark's ghost might seek justice for its species. Captain Ben cautioned the company not to lose sight of these beasts' true nature. He underlined that bull sharks were important components of the ecology, and their presence in the area signified a problem. The group devised a plan to lure the bull sharks away from Serenity Bay and reroute them to a safer habitat where they might thrive without endangering the villagers as a result of their findings. They used acoustic equipment to mimic natural noises, and the sharks appeared to respond to the call as if they were familiar with their relatives' ancient songs. Captain Ben, Dr. Izzy, and Mike successfully kept the bull sharks away from Serenity Bay throughout the night, restoring quiet to the previously ominous seas. After completing the assignment, the team returned to Serenity Bay to discuss their findings with the locals. Mike's compelling images were shown at the community center, and Dr. Izzy detailed their adventures with the bull sharks and the shipwreck. The pest touched many people's hearts, inspiring them to learn more about the natural world. As the Serenity Seeker made its trips, transporting curious people to new areas, those with the guts to investigate. John Andrews, an experienced marine scientist, and Nicole White, a fearless underwater cameraman, were famous for their daring shark encounters. John Andrews was a marine biologist, while Nicole White was an underwater videographer. They embarked on a dangerous journey in the summer of 2002 to get magnificent footage of bull sharks off the coast of an isolated island in the Bahamas. Their goal was to film the sharks while they were feeding. They had chosen the spot for its breathtaking lighthouse, which gave a fascinating backdrop to their expedition. The island was well known for its eerie past, and they had picked it. The history of the island, known as Emberlight Isle, was shrouded in secrecy. In the late 1800s, a lighthouse was built to assist ships in navigating securely across hazardous waters. However, after a severe storm in 1893, the keeper of the lighthouse and his family disappeared for unknown reasons, and the lighthouse has been unoccupied ever since. The locals thought the location was haunted by the specters of the family's deceased members, and some claimed to have heard ghostly mutterings in the night. John, Nicole, and the rest of their crew decided to make the old lighthouse their base of operations. The nearby waters were filled with bull sharks, allowing a fantastic display. On the other hand, as soon as the crew started their dives, an unexpected quarrel emerged. Strange things were happening to them as they explored the island, and the island's spirits appeared upset by their presence there. While Nicole was exploring the depths on one of her dives, her camera caught some eerie views of shadowy beings lurking in the coral reefs. She felt chills run down her spine, but the bull shark's temptation was too strong to resist. The following day, while studying the footage, they saw what appeared to be ghostly figures swirling about the sharks. It was almost as if the departed souls of the lighthouse were reaching out to the living from the afterlife. As their experiences unfolded underwater, the crew's tensions continued to rise. Kevin Gilbert, the seasoned captain of the ship, was certain that the ghosts were trying to forewarn them of an oncoming catastrophe. John and Nicole were adamant that they would finish their project regardless of any interference from the supernatural, even though he strongly encouraged them to leave the island. The group got ready for a night dive on the ill-fated evening when dusk fell upon the island, and as the night progressed, the world beneath the waves came to life with nocturnal critters, while bull sharks prowled the darkness looking for prey. John and Nicole and a few other crew members willing to take a risk plunged into the depths while filming the experience. However, the spirits had other ideas in mind. They were beginning to get further away from the protection of the boat when suddenly, a burst of wind caused their underwater lights to flicker and then go out. The divers began to feel anxious and stumbled around in pitch blackness. John's heart raced as he became aware of their menacing presence. The strange glow of the bioluminescent plankton suddenly made the shadowy outlines of swimming bull sharks nearby visible. Nicole's camera captured the subject's blazing eyes, creating a macabre and eerie image. They stayed together and tried to maintain their composure, but the sharks became increasing suddenly made the shadowy outlines of swimming bull sharks nearby visible. Nicole's camera captured the subject's blazing eyes, creating a macabre and eerie image. They stayed together and tried to maintain their composure, but the sharks became increasingly anxious as they picked up on the tension in the water. Kevin looked into the gloom above the surface as he prayed for his friends and his safe return. He quickly grabbed a bright floodlight to direct them back to safety. However, when the light source's beam penetrated the water, a large bull shark appeared from the depths and attacked the light source. The level of violence displayed by the shark was unheard of. He should return to the boat cautiously, hoping to avoid further angering the bull sharks. The sharks continued to follow the divers and circled them with a creepy intelligence, as if otherworldly forces were directing them. As they had almost reached the boat, the largest bull shark in the group, possibly the pack leader, made a daring approach. The animal's sharp teeth briefly grazed Nicole as it lunged at her. The crew reacted swiftly, dragging her away to safety, but the damage had already been done. Nicole's leg was bleeding heavily, and the crew was now in a potentially fatal predicament. Kevin revved up the boat's motor, hoping that the noise would frighten away the sharks, but the alpha shark seemed unfazed. Unfortunately, the beast escaped their grasp despite John, Nicole, and the rest of the crew's best efforts. It appeared the bull shark had a grudge against them, as it attacked them with a persistence inconsistent with their typical conduct. John grabbed a nearby spear gun and fired a shot at the alpha shark, striking it squarely in the flank with the bullet. This was John's last-ditch effort. This new wonder. He and his team were no strangers to treacherous diving expeditions, but delving into unexplored territory was dangerous and thrilling. Once the divers were fitted with the cameras that would send a live feed to the scientists on board outside the caves, Ben started the descent. His three teammates, Neil, Horace, and Fabio, followed him. Ben set off toward the 7-foot gaping hole in the rock face. Beneath the visible opening, it went down another 10 feet before opening up to a maze of tunnels, the very tunnels that Ben and his team needed to start mapping. They were engulfed in darkness beneath the rock and water. With the beams from their flashlights lighting their way, they set off toward the first of 4 passageways that needed to be explored. About 30 minutes went by without incident. The tunnel went straight and had ample room for the 4 men to file through. At one point, a cavern opened. The water was no longer dark. Somewhere above them, sunlight was coming through, and by the video feed leading back to the vessels outside, the crew saw the spacious cave just as the divers did. The divers heard them gasp in their earpieces at the magnificence of the shining streaks of light that cut through the blue water. He would have cheered with the rest on board if he did not have his mouthpiece in. The water level only reached halfway up the cave, and the other half was breathable air. He spied a ledge where they could catch their breath and place their equipment while Elle around. Ben and Fabio climbed onto the flat surface and allowed their cameras to catch as much footage of the cave's upper half as they could. Neil and Horace were still in the water, getting up close to the walls, thoroughly covering every inch they could reach to film. Ben had his face turned upward toward the ceiling, where the specks of light came through tiny cracks in the stone above their heads. He did not realize that the sudden splashing was anything other than the current at first, but Fabio brought Ben back from his intense observations with a hard blow to his shoulder. Ben turned to witness the water coming alive with splashes, screams, and desperate struggles. Horace and Neil found themselves trapped in a sharp corner, with 2 sharks closing in on them, 1 shark for each. But 2 more were slicing the water with their fins, heading straight for their victims. Scuba suits and oxygen tanks weighed down both men. Just keeping afloat was restricting their mobility exponentially. Fearing for his life, Horace desperately attempted to climb the sheer rock wall to escape the hammerhead's relentless attack. However, the water-slicked surface provided no grip, leaving him defenseless and stranded. Horace's efforts were short-lived. He was pulled down by the leg and into the water. On the other hand, Neil had taken to punching every inch of leathery flesh he could reach, aiming for the snouts of his attackers. But he had now been cornered by 3 of the predators, while the 4th was weaving in and out of the water with a screaming Horace trapped in its jaws. Ben and Fabio were frozen in horror. There was no way to help their companions without being attacked themselves, and the only way out of the cavern was to swim through the vicious animals. The smallest was around 10 feet long. The other 3 were well above the 15-foot mark. They'd be dead the moment they touched the water. Within seconds, the screaming had stopped, and the only sound was the continuous rage of the water beneath them, as the pack continued to rip apart what was left of their prey. It went on for hours. The stream from their cameras sent every second of the carnage back to the vessels. Soon all that was left were scraps from Neil and Horace's wetsuits, and the grotesque chunks of flesh floating on the surface. Now and then, the flat nose of one of the hammerheads would leap out to grab another morsel. Rescue teams from above could not scale the shark-infested waters to aid the 2 trapped men. So Ben and Fabio waited in silence except for the occasional splash as the beasts devoured another bite. Hours went by and the night was fast approaching. Ben could not stand the idea of being trapped in the dark with only the sounds of the massacre continuing in the waters. And just as he and Fabio had resigned themselves to spending the night on the ledge, there was a blast like a cannon from above, and the water was showered with rock shards. They were blowing the roof open. If rescue services couldn't enter from the bottom, they would blow their way in from the top. The men below hugged the wall and each other to avoid the raining missiles. Luckily, it only took 1 blow to open a hole large enough for them to lower a rope and harness. Ben sent Fabio up first, effective in attracting fish, not just the ones the fishermen were after. Beneath the surface, a 15-foot male bull shark was already heading toward the smell of the bloody entrails. Its keen senses had picked up the alluring scent of blood 2 miles away. The men were oblivious to the danger swimming beneath the surface and continued on the job. As the men pulled the net closer, they unknowingly drew the predator nearer. The shark set off after the retreating catch. From below, the beast opened its maw to grab at the school of fish. Rodrigo was standing chest deep in the water, his hands full with the fish-laden net, when he saw the appearance of the fin right in front of him. He barely had a chance to register his shock before the body and head of the bull shark followed the gray triangle. The animal was rearing to rip into the net, unaware that the boy was less than 2 meters in front of it. Its jaws closed instead on Rodrigo's right thigh. He was ripped beneath the water so swiftly that the net was yanked out of the other fisherman's hands. They looked on in horror. and before they could respond to the sudden attack, Rodrigo appeared above the water again. He was being dragged through the water as easily as a child's toy boat, a macabre torpedo racing through the depths, propelled by the monstrous force that gripped him. The boy's thigh was trapped in the shark's jaws, and he felt powerless against its strength. The shark relentlessly thrashed, trying to detach Rodrigo's limb. The men in the water were still frozen, and the few who had come to their senses had streaked out of the water to safety. Before the rest could follow suit, Vincentia was sprinting toward them. Her long legs had her at the water's edge in seconds, eyes never leaving the sight of her thrashing brother as she bounded onto the rocky outcrop. Vincentia crossed the uneven rock, and without breaking her speed, she leapt through the air, aiming right for her brother and his attacker. Her aim was true. She landed, hitting the animal in the space between his head and fin. Her bent elbow stretched out like a missile. Vincentia's full weight bore down on the beast. She barreled it down into the water by a good 2 meters. When Vincentia came up, she was ready to fight it with her bare hands if she had to. But the shark had released her brother and was speeding water. The cheerful dolphins suddenly turned fearful and fled from the 14-foot beast approaching them at a breakneck speed. Chantal's heart sank when they suddenly turned in the water and sped off, unaware of the danger behind her. But the screaming and yelling from the boat was now so intense that it snapped her out of her hurry. It was too late when Chantal finally made out what was going on. Chantal did not even get a chance to turn and see the murderous gray shape that leaped out of the water and grabbed her by the middle. All Chantal knew was that one moment she was wistfully looking at the retreating dolphins, and the next, she was underwater and in absolute agony. From the boat, the tourists were horrified to see the girl being taken down in a spectacular display of spraying blood, water, and pure aquatic rage. The padding on her life jacket bought Chantal a little time. The shark had bitten through it, deep enough to puncture her organs. It reared back and struck again, not satisfied with a mouthful of plastic tainted with the promise of flesh. Its jaws closed on Chantal with full force this time, nearly severing her in half. But the animal wasn't done yet. What little sinew was still keeping the screaming girl in one piece was ripped apart when the animal thrashed its head wildly. Chantal's upper half, still hysterically yelling for help, was thrown several feet into the air and landed in front of the terrified passengers. Only a South Korean tourist had enough sense in him to reach overboard and grab the tattered remains of Chantal's life jacket and pull what was left of her onto the boat. His tear-streaked face was the last thing Chantal saw before she sank into the darkness of death. But at least Chantal got to see the bottlenose dolphins of Swan Lake last hour tracking their scent. Their murderous advance beneath the surface went unnoticed until they were almost on top of the Greensworths. It was Donovan that first became aware of the danger. He yelled to his father when he finally spotted the slicing triangle only a few yards away. Silas was close to a small life raft with the 7-year-old twins beside him. But Donovan was several meters away, closest to the advancing pack. Donovan struck out to swim to his father to safety, but it was too late. Silas heard his oldest boy's scream get cut off as he was pulled down into the water by 2 of the enormous beasts. He did not allow the horror of what was happening before him to deter him from getting Malcolm and Toby to safety. He grabbed Toby by the scruff of his life jacket and hauled the small boy into the life raft. Toby had not even registered what was going on when he hit the deck. Malcolm did realize what was transpiring when he saw his big brother go down in the sudden splash of red from the feeding animals as they descended upon their prey. They were ripping Donovan to shreds. The preteen never stood a chance against the massive aquatic hunters. Malcolm was clambering onto his father's back, desperate to get out of the water and into the floating raft. The 2 remaining sharks, 12 and 14 feet long respectively, beelined for Silas, while the other 2 were tearing at Donovan. They hacked and tore into Silas's legs the moment they reached him. But the sudden weight of Malcolm on his back and the violent tug at his legs pushed Silas deeper into the water. Silas gripped the side of the raft with one hand and grabbed the boy with the other. And with the last of his breath and what remained of his strength, he boosted Malcolm up and over the edge. It was all he could do to at least get Malcolm out safely. And with that final push, Silas gave up any chance to get himself out. But the twins were safe. Silas knew his death was imminent as he was pulled down further into the hungry maws of the animals. I could safely go out searching, and there was nothing left. The twins were kept below deck to spare them the sight of the ongoing massacre on the water, in the care of the chef. It took them more than a day to finally reach the shoreline where their mother awaited them. Toby and Malcolm never got back in the water after that fateful day. What was left of the seafaring family was now forever landbound. Coral Bay, Australia was at its peak for the holiday season. The sands and waters were full of beachgoers and snorkelers. Coolers were open and spirits were jolly. But Jack Musgrave and his aging father David weren't here to chime in on the festivities. For the past 20 years, ever since Jack graduated high school, the two went out to spearfish in the area once a month. It was a skill David taught his son from an early age. When Jack became a man, they continued the tradition, not out of necessity but for companionship, and to take a moment between the rat race of life to catch up. Quieter here on the outskirts. The men dressed in wetsuits and spears in hand walked into the water. For the first hour or two, they were more intent on relaying the past month's events than seriously looking for specks of living silver beneath the clear water. But when David snagged the day's first catch, the hunt took on a more serious tone. Jack and David drifted apart, each chest deep in the surf, scanning the shallows intently. Jack quickly caught up to his father's tally by spearing 2 large fish in quick succession. So David decided that the pocket Jack had chosen was more fruitful. He went to join his son, but he stopped short when his path was interrupted by an impossibly large shape. This thing did not give off the silvery sparkle that the fish did. The dull gray beast was a 15-foot great white. Even in shock, David knew it did not belong here in the shallow water. And he was right. Hunger and desperation had brought it in from the deep ocean. The wounds of the 3 fish they speared attracted the predator to their location. It was starving, desperate, and already had its fins pulled back, ready to strike at Jack. David managed a warning shout at his son, and David turned just in time to see the gray form lunging at him. The shallow water did not allow the shark to utilize its full speed. This, coupled with David's warning, was just enough that Jack could launch himself sideways out of the gunning beast's path. The shark still managed to glance at Jack's right leg. Its teeth sheared through the wetsuit's fabric and tore at the skin beneath. David darted forward with surprising speed for a man of 64, ready to fight to the death if he had to protect his boy. The shark made a sharp turn and returned for the elusive prey, ready to strike again. But David let his spear fly when the animal reared out of the water, mouth agape and about to smash down on Jack's torso that had just re-emerged. The older man's aim was true. The point of the spear landed in its soft underbelly, spraying the air with blood before it landed back in the water. David no longer had a weapon, but Jack had regained his footing since he could not stand on his injured right leg. Jack did, however, still have his spear, and this time when the beast, now blind with pain and hunger, desperately torpedoed out of the water, Jack was ready. The massive head came out like a cannon, heading for Jack head-on. And Jack pulled back and let his missile shoot through the air. It sailed through the jagged teeth and straight down the shark's gullet. It was slicing through the hard roof of its mouth and into the soft brain tissue behind. It hit the water, thrashing in panic and spasms just 5 feet before Jack. The water was alive with fin, tail, and foam from its wild attempts to dislodge the metallic rod. The shark was no longer focused on the target that had looked so delectable only moments before. It now only knew of the agony the metallic missiles in its body were causing it. Then David was suddenly there. He grabbed his disabled and bleeding son under the armpit and hauled him toward the nearest outcrop of rock. Neither dared take the time to look back. If they were going to have any chance of escape, it would be while the beast was still focused on its injuries. It took them only seconds to reach safety, David again displaying enormous strength for a man his age. He picked Jack up and